Imagine a dusty road in a small Nigerian town, where the sun beats down on cracked pavement and kids kick a worn soccer ball between rusted car frames. In the middle of this chaos, a young woman named Amara steps out of a shed, her hands smudged with grease, her eyes fixed on something extraordinary. It's not a shiny Tesla or a sleek Toyota. It's a boxy, rugged vehicle that hums softly. No gas tank, no charging port, just a faint glow from a device tucked under its hood. Amara calls it the Adura, a Yoruba word for prayer, because that's what it took to build it. A car that runs on something she claims is everywhere, ambient energy pulled from the air itself. Sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But Amara's not dreaming. She's built it, tested it, driven it through the potholed streets of Ibadan, and now the world's starting to notice. This isn't just a car, it's a revolution, born not in Silicon Valley or Shanghai, but right here in Africa. And the big players, Tesla, Volkswagen, Toyota, they're not ready for what's coming. Stick around, because this story is about to take you on a wild ride through innovation, betrayal, and a fight to change the world. Amara's journey starts in a place most people wouldn't expect. Ibadan, Nigeria, isn't exactly known for cutting-edge tech. It's a city of markets, mosques, and relentless hustle. Amara grew up here, the daughter of a mechanic and a teacher, fixing old Peugeots with her dad by day and studying physics by lantern light at night. She was always curious, tearing apart radios to see how they worked, sketching ideas for machines that could do more with less. By her 20s, she was teaching herself electrical engineering from pirated textbooks and YouTube videos, piecing together a vision no one else could see. Nigeria's roads are brutal potholes deep enough to swallow tires, dust that chokes engines, and fuel prices that bleed wallets dry. Amara saw a problem no one was solving: cars that could survive this chaos without costing a fortune. That's when she started experimenting with something radical. What if a vehicle didn't need fuel or a plug? What if it could pull energy from the environment, solar, thermal, even radio waves, and keep moving? It sounded impossible, but Amara wasn't one to back down. Her first breakthrough came in 2020, in a shed behind her family's house. She'd been tinkering with a small generator, a patchwork of scavenged parts, old laptop batteries, copper wire from a junked transformer, and a cracked solar panel she bought from a market trader. Late one night, she hooked it up to a toy car. The thing buzzed to life, zipping across the floor without a battery or cord. Amara stared, heart pounding, as it looped around her feet for 10 minutes straight. She didn't sleep that night. She knew she was onto something big. Over the next few years, she scaled it up, building prototypes in secret. By 2024, she had a working model, a clunky, welded-together buggy that could drive 50 kilometers on a single charge of her ambient harvester. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. She drove it through Ibadan's markets, drawing crowds of curious onlookers. Kids cheered, traders laughed, and a few old mechanics shook their heads, muttering about juju. But Amara wasn't worried about skeptics. She was thinking bigger. Words spread fast. A local journalist posted a grainy video of the Adura online, and within days it had millions of views. People called it Nigeria's answer to Tesla, a car that could change everything. But Amara wasn't chasing fame. She wanted to build something real, something that could help farmers haul crops, mothers get kids to school, and drivers escape the chokehold of fuel cartels. Nigeria's economy is tough. 600 million people across Africa still live without reliable electricity, and fuel shortages can strand entire towns. Amara's Adura didn't need a grid or a gas station. It was built for survival, with thick steel panels, a suspension that could handle craters, and electronics sealed against the dust storms that sweep the Sahel. This wasn't a car for showrooms, it was a car for life. But building a dream in Nigeria isn't easy. Amara needed money, materials, and a team. She started small, partnering with a local welder named Chidi, who could bend steel like it was clay, and an electronics whiz named Funk, who'd hacked her way through Lagos tech meets. Together, they turned the shed into a workshop, hammering out prototypes under a tin roof that rattled in the rain. They sourced parts from Nigeria's growing supply chain, steel from the Devki Group's coastal mill, tires from a new factory in Lagos, even upholstery leather tanned in Kano. This wasn't just about building a car. It was about building it African. Every bolt, every wire, every stitch had to come from home. By late 2024, they had 3 working Aduras, each tougher than the last. Farmers in nearby villages started borrowing them, hauling cassava and yams without spending a kobo on fuel. The results were staggering. Maintenance costs dropped by 30%, and drivers reported saving hours stuck at fuel queues. Then came the game changer in early 2025. A Chinese investor named Li Wei saw the viral video. Li wasn't from one of the big players like BYD or Chery. He ran a small Shenzhen-based company specializing in solar tech, looking for the next big thing. He flew to Ibadan, walked into Amara's shed, and offered her a deal: $2 million to scale up production, in exchange for a 40% stake in her company. Amara hesitated. She'd heard stories of foreign investors swooping in, taking control, and leaving locals with nothing. But Li was different. He didn't want to own her idea. He wanted to build it with her. He brought engineers from Shenzhen, experts in battery systems and solar integration, to refine the Adura's design. They added lightweight solar skins too, the roof boosting range by 20%, and a regenerative braking system that clawed back energy on Nigeria's bumpy roads. By mid-2025, Amara's team was building 50 Aduras a month in a small factory outside Ibadan, employing 200 locals, welders, electricians, and software techs learning on the job. The world started paying attention. Morocco, already Africa's auto giant, sent a delegation to see the Adura. They were impressed. Morocco's factories in Tangier were pumping out 610,000 vehicles a year, but nothing like this. The Adura wasn't just another EV, it was a new category, a vehicle that could run where grids didn't exist. South Africa's BMW plant took notice too, sending engineers to study Amara's ambient harvester. Even Ghana's Kananka Automobile, known for its solar-powered pickups, reached out for a potential partnership. But with attention came trouble. Global auto giants weren't happy. Tesla, Volkswagen, Toyota, they'd spent billions on charging networks and battery tech. A car that didn't need either was a threat. Rumors started swirling. Anonymous ex-posts claimed Amara's tech was fake, a scam to fleece investors. A European auto lobby group published a report calling the Adura unscientific, despite never testing it. Amara shrugged it off. She'd faced worse: local officials demanding bribes, suppliers hiking prices, even a break-in at her workshop. But the pressure was mounting. Then came the betrayal. Funk, her electronics genius, was approached by a German auto conglomerate. They offered her a 7-figure deal to jump ship and bring Amara's designs with her. Funk didn't take the money, but she wavered, and that hesitation cracked the team's trust. Chidi, loyal but stubborn, argued they should patent the tech and sell it to the highest bidder. Amara refused. This wasn't about getting rich. It was about building something that could change lives. She fired Funk, hired new engineers, and doubled down. By July 2025, her factory was churning out 100 Aduras a month, and she'd signed a deal with Nigeria's government to supply 1,000 vehicles for rural clinics and schools. The Adura was becoming a symbol of what Africa could do: build tough, practical machines that didn't bow to foreign control. But the real test was coming. Tesla, reeling from a 13% sales drop in early 2025, wasn't sitting idle. Elon Musk didn't mention Amara by name, but he tweeted about snake oil tech that couldn't scale. Behind closed doors, Tesla's engineers were scrambling to counter the Adura's appeal. They fast-tracked their Redwood crossover, slashing the price to under $30,000 and adding solar panels and boosted regenerative braking. Volkswagen pivoted to delaying their all-electric lineup to focus on hybrids that could mimic the Adura's self-sufficiency. Even Toyota, always cautious, partnered with Huawei to test solar charging systems. The global auto industry was in a quiet panic, rethinking strategies built on charging stations and lithium mines. Amara's invention, real or not in their eyes, was forcing a reckoning. Back in Nigeria, Amara faced her own battles. The government deal brought scrutiny. Local politicians wanted a cut, and power outages, ironic for a car that didn't need the grid, slowed production. She needed more funding to scale, but Liwei's $2 million was running dry. Enter Amina, a Nigerian billionaire who'd made her fortune in telecoms. Amina saw the Adura not just as a car, but as a way to put Nigeria on the map. She invested $10 million, enough to build a second factory in Lagos, capable of producing 5,000 vehicles a year. Amina also brought connections, introductions to Ethiopia's government, which had banned petrol cars, and to Kenya's Mobius Motors, looking to integrate Amara's tech into their rugged SUVs. The Adura was no longer a shed project. It was a movement. The ripple effects were global. In South Africa, where Chery and BYD were already shaking up the market, dealers started stocking Adura knockoffs, cheaper hybrids with solar panels, built to compete. BYD, not one to be outdone, announced a $50 million plant in Nigeria to produce their own self-sustaining pickups. Hiring 500 locals, China's strategy was clear. Partner, don't control. They offered Amara technical support, not ownership, framing it as a win for Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa praised the deal, calling it a model for mutual growth, but not everyone was happy. Western automakers, locked into their charging networks, were losing ground. A Shell survey from 2025 showed 40% of European drivers and a third of Americans hesitated to buy EVs because of charging fears. The Adura, or even the idea of it, was shifting perceptions. If a car could run without plugs, why invest in a Tesla? Amara's biggest challenge wasn't the tech or the politics, it was proving the Adura was real. Scientists demanded peer-reviewed papers, but Amara wasn't a lab researcher. Her proof was in the vehicles driving Nigeria's roads, carrying farmers, traders, and families. She invited a team from MIT to test the Adura in July 2025. They arrived skeptical, ran tests for a week, and left stunned. The ambient harvester wasn't perfect. It couldn't power a car indefinitely. but it extended range by 40% in sunny conditions, enough to make a difference in places without chargers. The report wasn't conclusive, but it was enough to quiet some critics. Amara didn't care about proving every detail. She cared about impact. Her factory was training workers, creating jobs, and cutting dependence on foreign fuel. Nigeria's unions, once wary, backed her, tying bonuses to local sourcing goals. Every Adura used 70% African materials, from steel to rubber, keeping money in the continent. The global stage was next. In August 2025, Amara was invited to a UN climate conference in Nairobi. She drove an Adura 500 kilometers from Ibadan, through dusty roads and sudden rains. Arriving with a crowd waiting, she spoke to a packed room, not about tech specs, but about people, farmers who could now afford transport, clinics reaching remote villages, kids getting to school without fuel costs. The audience, from diplomats to activists, gave her a standing ovation. But Amara wasn't there to bask in applause. She announced a partnership with Kenya's Devki Group and Egypt's tire factory to supply 10,000 Aduras across East and West Africa by 2026. China's GAC Group joined, offering to build hybrid versions for Ethiopia's new Evenly market. The Adura was no longer just Nigeria's, it was Africa's. The auto giants weren't done fighting. Tesla's stock took a hit after the Nairobi conference, dropping 5% in a week. Investors weren't just spooked by Amara, they saw China's shadow bid Chery and GAC gaining ground in markets Tesla once ignored. Volkswagen started talks with Nigeria's Innocent to license local designs, while Ford quietly funded a solar charging project in Ghana. The industry was shifting, not because the Adura was perfect, but because it showed what was possible. Africa wasn't chasing Western trends anymore. It was setting them up. Amara's factory in Lagos was now employing 1,000 people, with plans to double that by 2027. Workers weren't just bolting parts together, they were learning to code, weld, and innovate. A welder named Tund, who started with Amara in the shed, now led a team designing a lighter frame. A software tech named Blessing wrote code to optimize the Adura's energy capture. This wasn't just a car company, it was a school, a community, a future. But Amara knew the road ahead wasn't smooth. Competitors were circling, from Chinese startups to European giants. Patents were tricky. Her tech was hard to protect in a world where big players could reverse anything. And Nigeria's infrastructure, from power grids to roads, was still a mess. Yet every morning she walked into her factory, greeted by the hum of machines and the chatter of workers. She saw Aduras on the roads, carrying loads of yams, ferrying kids, even powering small homes with their batteries. In Ghana, taxi drivers reported cutting fuel costs by half. In Kenya, safari operators used Aduras to navigate dusty trails without breakdowns. The numbers were real: 30% lower maintenance, 40% longer range in rural areas, and jobs for thousands. The story is not over. Amara's planning a new model, the Adura 2, with a range of 300 kilometers and a price under $10,000. She's talking to Ethiopia about a factory, to Morocco about exports, and to South Africa about training programs. China's still in the game, with BYD offering to co-develop a bus version. But the real victory isn't in the deals or the tech, it's in the people. Farmers who can afford to transport crops, mothers who can get kids to school, workers who see a future in their own country. Amara's not just building cars, she's building hope. And the world's watching, from Detroit to Beijing, wondering what comes next. Africa's not waiting for permission anymore. It's driving forward, and Amara's behind the wheel.